Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Garima Gospels. There are a pair of gospel books in Ethiopia that are some of the oldest religious texts in the world, and they're known as the Garima Gospels. The oldest of the two is thought to be the earliest surviving illuminated Christian manuscript in the world, and according to tradition, the oldest one was completed around the year 500 AD. This has been verified through analysis done by scientists who radiocarbon dated the book, although it shows that it could have been written as early as 390 AD.
These aren't your typical Christian manuscripts, though. They're the Ethiopic version of the Gospels. Both are housed at the Abba Garima Monastery, where they have been for at least 700 years.
It's believed when Muslims occupied the area for 500 years, between the 9th and 14th centuries, the Gospels remained hidden inside a cave. But once they were rediscovered, they were brought to the monastery and have been there ever since. You may be wondering, though, who wrote the books? Well, that's also a matter of tradition. Legend states that it was Saint Abba Garima who arrived in Ethiopia from Rome in 494 AD. It was Abba Garima who helped turn Ethiopia into a Christian empire. Back then, it was known as the Kingdom of Aksum. He allegedly wrote and illustrated the complete set of Gospels in just one day. God even helped out by stopping the sun from setting until Abba Garima had completed his work. If he really did write the books in a single day, that would be super impressive. One of the books has 348 pages, and the other has 322. These are big books, thick like dictionaries. But what makes them really special is that they are filled with beautifully illuminated illustrations. They contain portraits of evangelists, an illustration of the Temple of Solomon, and even a picture of the Fountain of Life.
And now for number 9. But first, it's shout-out time. I want to give a big shout-out to Musa Unzongoy and Buzzing Along for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this.
Number 9. The Maya Codex.
The Grolier Codex is one of the rarest books on the planet. It was reportedly discovered by illegal looters when they raided a cave in Mexico's Chiapas state in the 1960s.
Then it was kept on a dusty shelf in the basement of the National Museum in Mexico City. Ever since it came to the attention of international scientists, it's been regarded with skepticism. Nobody was really sure if the ancient codex was real or a clever fake. But now, a new study has revealed that the codex is 100% legitimate. Not only is it real, but it could be the oldest surviving manuscript from anywhere in the Americas. Stephen Houston from Brown University worked with his colleagues at Harvard and Yale to meticulously analyze the ancient codex, and they published their findings in the journal Maya Archaeology. According to the authors of the study, the codex was found in a cave with a small collection of other items, including a wooden mask and a sacrificial knife. But little else is known about the mysterious cavern, or who placed the book inside of it. Maybe it was a tomb, or perhaps a secret stash of treasure.
The codex isn't particularly large. It has 10 painted pages decorated in beautiful Mayan iconography. It also contains a calendar designed for tracking the movement of Venus.
It doesn't track the movement of the Earth, but a planet light years away in the darkness of space. And amazingly, the calendar in the codex is shockingly accurate. It counts the number of days between when Venus rises fully above the morning star just before the sunrise. And this very calendar likely helped the Maya stick to their ritual cycles, which were based on celestial movements. The manuscript also contains images of what the researchers called workaday gods. Basically, these were deities for the common peasant, gods and patrons of things like the sun, death, and lightning. The researchers believe that the script may have belonged to a calendar priest. It was accurate for 104 years, meaning it could have been passed down through 3 generations of early Maya astronomers. Number 8. The Kish Tablet. In the ancient Sumerian city of Kish, archaeologists discovered a limestone tablet. Today, Kish is in modern-day Iraq, but in 3500 BC, this was the cradle of civilization. It was the stage for the beginning of modern society as we know it. Some of the first human advancements were made here, like the very first form of complex writing. Archaeologists believe the written word, called cuneiform, was developed by Sumerian scribes in the city of Uruk in 3200 BC. Scribes figured out how to use a piece of reed to shape indentations into clay. As the language evolved, it became more widely used, and soon enough, people were chiseling cuneiform into stone objects.
Markings and symbols were drawn everywhere to convey all manner of information, and amazingly, cuneiform continued to thrive for 3,000 years.
This script wasn't technically a language, only a system of writing, but it wasn't replaced with the modern alphabet until the rise of the Roman Empire in the 1st century AD. What makes the tablet discovered in the city of Kish so exciting is that it predates the invention of cuneiform by 300 years. It's covered in pictographic writing that scientists are calling proto-cuneiform. It's never been deciphered, so nobody knows what in the world it says. Thousands of other documents have also been found throughout the area, but none of them are as old or as baffling as this one.
Scientists say the Kish Tablet is the best representation of the transitional stage between pictographs and a real system of writing.
With cuneiform came the emergence of syllabic script, and that was when shapes, aka letters, started to have sound attached to them, as opposed to pictographs that had a meaning attached to the picture. This is the big aspect that separates primitive scribbles from coherent writing. Hopefully, scientists will be able to figure out what's written on the tablet one day. It would be amazing to see what the earliest known example of human writing says. It could be someone's grocery list, or maybe it's the name of a local ruler. It could even just be something silly written down by a youngster. What do you think the Kish Tablet says? Let me know in the comments. Maybe AI will help us figure it out. Number 7. The Missal of Silos. In the Spanish province of Burgos is a monastery hidden in the rural countryside. It's called the Monastery of Santo Domingo de Silos, and it was built as a 10th century Benedictine abbey. It's located near the city of Burgos, where legendary Spanish hero El Cid supposedly lived. The abbey is famous for two very interesting things. The monastery rose to fame in the 1990s for its singing monks, who were bizarrely famous in the US, and in total they sold over 6 million copies of their melodic singing. But the monastery is also famous for a small artifact that's held inside its library, which has been standing for 1,000 years.
The artifact is labeled Manuscript Number 6, but it's more popularly known as the Missal of Silos. It's the oldest European document written on paper. Not parchment or papyrus, but real sheets of paper.
Dates vary, but it's generally agreed that the book was completed around 1036, definitely prior to 1080. The manuscript is typical for its day, a breviary missal filled with chants used by monks during the daily mass. Because it was based on the Mozarabic rite, which went out of style when it was suspended by the church in 1089, researchers know it can't possibly be older than that. The book isn't completely made of paper though. The first 38 sheets are made of paper, but the rest is parchment. For a 1,000-year-old document, it's in surprisingly good condition, and since the 1970s, the library has taken great care of its pages, as the writing in the book is still 100% legible. As for its origins, that's probably a mystery that'll never be solved. It likely wasn't created in Silos, and neither was the paper. It's possible that the paper came from Islamic Spain, and that the manuscript was written at a monastery much farther to the north. The document likely arrived at the Silos monastery in the 19th century after spending 900 years floating around the country. Number 6. The Anatomical Atlas. The oldest surviving anatomical atlas is believed to be a grouping of Chinese texts that were written 2,200 years ago. They were inscribed on silk and then buried inside a tomb. The texts were found in the 1970s in the tomb of the Marquis of Dai named Li Kang in south-central China. He was buried with his wife, Lady Dai, and their son. Li Kang was the chancellor of the Changsha kingdom during the Western Han dynasty. Lady Dai's tomb was found with 1,400 artifacts inside, and the Lady Dai herself was discovered to be in phenomenal condition, so perfectly preserved that her body was taken to the Hunan Provincial Museum with great care. She's been called one of the most well-preserved mummies in the history of humanity, and amazingly, Li Kang and Lady Dai were fully revealed by a team of 1,500 high school students who volunteered to conduct the excavation in 1972. The anatomical texts were found throughout the tombs of the family. They predate all texts on acupuncture, which was an ancient form of Chinese medicine. And that's an extremely big deal because of how important acupuncture is to Chinese history. But the texts have proved extremely difficult to understand. First, they had to be translated from the original Chinese. Then, researchers had to figure out what parts of the anatomy were being referred to in the text.
It took a lot of review view, but soon researchers started figuring out the secret details of the script. Whoever wrote the atlas gave impressive details on intricate parts of the human body.
Blood vessels, the ulnar artery, tendons, bones, sinew, and even the pathways connecting the heart are mentioned in the atlas. There is also a detailed description of the pathway of the long saphenous vein. That's the conduit that carries blood from your legs up into your heart. At the end of the investigation, the scientific team concluded that the text is the oldest surviving anatomical atlas. It's the oldest book giving concise descriptions of the human body. It was likely written by an extremely skilled doctor to be used by students and other medical practitioners in ancient China. But how did they figure out so many tiny details of human anatomy? Well, the researchers think they dissected the corpses of prisoners to better understand how the body works. But their guess is as good as yours. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Number 5. The oldest love poem. The oldest love poem was written roughly 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. It's called The Love Song for Shu Xin, and it's exactly as romantic as it sounds. It was composed in 2000 BC, likely to be used during the sacred rites of a fertility cult. It was discovered in the 19th century by early archaeologists who scoured Mesopotamia looking for evidence of the Old Testament. The thing about early archaeology was that much of its funding came from the public, and the public cared a lot about religion. They weren't interested in finding the lost history of ancient civilizations, so for archaeologists to do good work, they had to insist that they were looking for scientific proof of biblical narratives. Instead of finding that, though, they discovered cuneiform tablets far older than the Bible itself. They also found tablets with biblical narratives, only they were written thousands of years before the Bible. It soon became clear, even if it wasn't publicized, that the authors of the Bible plagiarized Mesopotamian sources. But that's neither here nor there. Between 1846 and 1847, archaeologist Austin Henry Layard excavated the city of Nineveh. Up until then, the oldest recognized book in the world was considered to be the Bible by Western society. The oldest love poem was believed to be the Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon, which of course is in the Bible. But when Layard found the destroyed library of King Ashurbanipal of Assyria, everything changed. The Bible was no longer the oldest book in the world because the love song written in 2000 BC became 2,000 years older than the love poem in the Bible. After its discovery, the love song for Shu Xin was taken to the Istanbul Museum, where it was locked in a drawer until 1951. And only then did famous Sumerologist Samuel Noah Kramer decode the text. He was shocked to find that the love poem was used in an annual ceremony known as the Sacred Marriage. This was when the king would hold a symbolic marriage to the goddess Inanna. It was believed to be the king's duty to marry the goddess, ensuring prosperity and great success in the coming year. Number 4. Symposium. In ancient Greece, a symposium was what you'd call a drinking party. It was a semi-formal affair in which friends would gather in a private home to have intellectual discussions. They'd also often get extremely drunk and rowdy, but this really just depended on the guests. Either way, though, a symposium was the Greek version of the adult house party. Greek writer Plutarch describes it as a passing of time over wine, which, guided by gracious behavior, ends in friendship. One of the most famous symposiums ever held took place in 416 BC at the house of a poet by the name of Agathon. The event was recorded in epic detail by legendary philosopher and author Plato. It was recorded as a dialogue in his masterpiece Symposium, which was written between 385 and 370 BC. The book is remarkably simple in that each guest at the banquet, including philosopher Socrates and General Alcibiades, must give a speech praising Eros, the god of love and desire. Then, after the speeches, a bunch of people show up to the house and everyone gets extremely drunk until the sun comes up. It isn't the most interesting read for the modern generation, but then again, it was written almost 2,400 years ago. It's still remembered as one of the most important philosophical works of Greece, and one of the earliest, and it was certainly one of Plato's most important philosophical texts. Any Plato fans out there? Let me know in the comments below. Number 3. The Tale of the Shipwrecked Sailor. One of the oldest adventure stories in the world was written during the time of Egypt's Middle Kingdom, between 2040 and 1782 BC. The story is a text called The Tale of the Shipwrecked Sailor, written by author unknown. Nobody knows its exact origin, and there is only a single copy left. According to scholar Miriam Lichtheim, the only surviving copy is written on papyrus. It was found stashed in the Imperial Museum of St. Petersburg, but it's since been moved to Moscow and it's officially titled P. Leningrad 1115. The story is a typical tale of redemption. It relates with the concept of death from life and the repetitive nature of existence. It was written at the same time that the cult of Osiris was gaining serious popularity in Egypt. The cult had been growing in power since about 2613 BC. By the time the Middle Kingdom was established, it was by far the most influential religious belief system. The cult was centered around the myth of the god Osiris, who, much like Jesus Christ, was resurrected after his death. The Egyptians believed that when a person died, they'd go to the field of reeds. It was a paradise not unlike the Elysian fields in Greek mythology. They believed that it would be a mirror image of the existence they'd known while on the earthly plane. In other words, a continuation of the life they'd known, but without any of the hardship. The tale of the shipwrecked sailor is the story of a king's official. The official returns from an adventure that didn't go particularly well. He has to give bad news to the king and is extremely worried that he might end up dead because of it. So his servant tries to cheer him up by telling him a story of his own. He tells about his time as a sailor during a complete failure of an expedition. But the failure led to an exhilarating adventure. The story continues on about a shipwreck, a talking serpent, and the servant's eventual return to Egypt. The moral of the story is that even when faced with disaster, the adventure that comes of it can make one a better person. The tale of the shipwrecked sailor is an inspirational story mixed with comedy and adventure, and the single surviving copy makes it one of the oldest adventure tales ever written. Number 2. The Diamond Sutra. The Diamond Sutra is one of the most important ancient texts in the world, even though most people don't know what it is. It's a sacred Buddhist text that's only about 6,000 words. The manuscript was common through China, Japan, and other parts of Asia, and its exact contents are simple enough. A conversation between the Buddha and his pupil, Subhati. Legend has it the Diamond Sutra was dictated by the Buddha himself. And if true, that would date the original copy to being written prior to his death between 483 and 400 BC. As you can likely guess, there are 0 copies left of the original, but there is a version of it that was printed 1,100 years ago that's currently on display at the British Library. This version of the Diamond Sutra is the oldest known printed book in the world. It was printed in 868 AD by a man named Wang Zhi in China. Nobody has any idea who this guy really was, only that he commissioned a block printer to create a scroll of the sacred Buddhist text. The scroll is over 17 feet long, and it's covered in inscriptions and has beautiful imagery on it. The whole thing is positively stunning. To give you an idea of how ancient this printed book is, just compare it to the Gutenberg Bible. The Gutenberg Bible was the first book made with movable type, which came along nearly 600 years later. Like so many of the greatest ancient relics, the Diamond Sutra was found by accident. A monk in Dunhuang, China, found it in the year 1900. He was looking through an old outpost that was once part of the Silk Road, positioned at the edge of the monstrous Gobi Desert, and it was there that the monk came across a secret library that had been sealed for almost 1,000 years. This was very much like a discovery from an Indiana Jones movie. Just try to imagine the monk at the edge of existence, laboring under the brutal sun of the desert. Then, behind a sealed wall, he discovered a cavern filled to the brim with 40,000 scrolls and documents. This place later became known as the Cave of 1,000 Buddhas. And out of all the books that were found at the library, the Diamond Sutra has become the most important. Number 1. The Message in a Bottle. On June 12, 1886, a gin bottle was thrown over the edge of a ship by a German captain, and inside that bottle of gin was a printed note. The note contained a date and some coordinates, as well as the details about the ship and the captain, like where they departed from and where they were going. The note requested that whoever found the message in the bottle should send a note to the nearest German embassy. It asked the finder to include the time and place the bottle was recovered, but unfortunately for the Deutsche Seefahrt in Hamburg who wrote the note, it wasn't discovered for 130 132 years. Tanya Illman from Perth found the message while she was strolling along the beach in Western Australia with her family dog in January 2018. She saw what looked like a glass bottle in the sand, and on a whim, she picked it up. At first, she thought it might make a cute ornament for her house. But then, the family discovered what looked like a rolled-up cigarette inside the bottle. And upon closer inspection, they realized that it was a piece of paper, a real message in a bottle. The family followed the instructions written 132 years prior, and the bottle soon found its way to the Assistant Curator of Maritime Archaeology at the Western Australian Museum, Dr. Ross Anderson. He consulted with experts in Germany and the Netherlands, and in the end, the message proved to be authentic, confirmed by Guinness World Records. It's now considered to be the oldest message in a bottle ever discovered. The one thing to keep in mind is that the bottle didn't float aimlessly through the ocean for 13 decades. It likely washed up on the Australian coastline in about a year. Then it was buried under the sand, and Tanya was lucky enough to be the one who found it. Thanks for watching. Which of these ancient texts would you love to have a copy of? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!